Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We are doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business here with the News Driven Hour, right after Ben Shapiro. And right before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. It's Mottek On Money, live on the air right now on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Coming up later this hour, I'll be joined live by veteran federal prosecutor Nathan Hochman, candidate for Los Angeles County District Attorney. A lot riding on the presidential debate and the November election for you, the consumer, investors, as well as the economy. We'll get a preview of the debate tonight from taxpayer advocate Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, with taxes one of the big issues in areas where President Biden and President Trump have very different views. Turning to the financial markets today, the NASDAQ led the advance of stocks today, with the Dow and S&P 500 fending off some weakness seen throughout the trading session. The NASDAQ getting a lift from a nearly 5% gain in Tesla shares. Also, Amazon, which is part of the NASDAQ, closed at a record high, just shy of $194 a share. It was the best performer in the Dow on Wednesday today. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of just about 16 points. The S&P 500 moved up 9, and the NASDAQ popped 87.5 points. We did see a sell-off in government debt, sending Treasury yields to their highest closing levels in a couple of weeks, despite a lack of any major calendar-driven event. Of course, a lot of people on the sidelines ahead of the debate today. Right now, we're seeing gold pulling back about $17 to end at $2,299.20 an ounce. And let's get right to it here. First on the markets, the economy, the debate this evening, and the whole works. Joining us live now, veteran financial and political commentator Ben Stein for our occasional Frank and Stein conversation right here on 790 KBC. Ben Stein, author, economist, attorney, game show host to Win Ben Stein's Money. And yes, that Ben Stein, actor too, who appeared in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, in one of the most famous scenes in American cinema, where he took the role. And let me take the role right now. Ben Stein, good afternoon.
How are you, sir? How are you, my
Wonderful.
dear friend?
Wonderful. Thanks for being part of Frankenstein again this afternoon. And big news day today, and it seems like we're just getting started here with the debate this evening. Give us your impressions. Set the stage for us ahead of the debate this evening.
It's a kind of an interesting situation because the
debate is tomorrow, by the way. I'm one day ahead of myself. I'm one day ahead of myself.
I didn't want to be rude to your old pal, but yeah, it is tomorrow.
I've lost track of time. It's tomorrow.
Well, that's okay. When I'm around you, Frank, I lose track of time too. The economy is very, very strong, extremely strong. Yet its very strength is killing people. I mean, it is so strong that prices have risen for very basic goods and services across the market, across the whole country, across the whole world, and it makes it difficult for many, many families to make ends meet and to even plot a course through these treacherous waters. And yet, people are saying, some people are saying, well, it's a mess, it's just a terrible mess. It's not a terrible mess. It's a super strong economy. I am not a big fan of Mr. Biden, not at all, but let's give it to him. He's got a very, very strong economy there. And the ordinary American, yes, to be sure, is suffering from these super high prices. But also, the ordinary American has a job. A very smart friend of mine used to say, better to be overwhelmed than unemployed. And I think a lot of Americans feel overwhelmed, but there are very few of them who are unemployed. And that's a nice situation to be in.
Well, a lot of people not feeling so great based on the latest consumer confidence reading we get, with inflation still, of course, as we've talked about it, and you're an expert on it, still a major concern. That's going to be, of course, another hot topic tomorrow evening, right? So what about inflation, and what do you expect to come out of that part of the debate?
Well, I think people are going to say there's too much inflation. Prices are way too high. It's an extreme inconvenience. I think any one of us, especially here in Southern California, where we're speaking from, knows that to pull into a gas station is a shock. Just to get up to the front of the line at the grocery store is a shock. It's not just uncomfortable. It's a shock. It's like being hit by something, and it's not a very good way to feel. On the other hand, almost everybody who has a job. I meet people saying, "Oh, it's terrible, terrible." Well, if you can't get a job in today's economy, there's something wrong with you. I mean, there's something wrong with your motivation, with your laziness. You should be able to get a job. Okay, well, it's not going to be a job like president of General Motors. It's going to be a job but it's a job that will pay them a decent, if not lavish, wage, and will allow them to put bread in front of the children and keep the family together while eating their breakfast next morning, or eating their cornflakes that morning. And there's food on the plate, not at the level we want to pay, much more expensive than that. But there's a job, there's a paycheck, there's money coming in. Not a bad situation. It could be a lot worse.
I hate to tell you this, hate to break news to you, Ben Stein, but with the record number of homeless people on the streets of Los Angeles, many people who are homeless these days have full-time jobs, cars, families out there on the streets, and it just the affordability is just not working for folks.
Well, wait a second. Yeah, that's true. The jobs are not paying enough for people to buy decent houses, but that's because there is an extreme shortage of housing. I mean, we had all kinds of measures put in place by the government and other entities within the state of California, and in many other states as well, that made it more expensive to build a house and then to comply with all the insurance and other requirements for building and owning a house. So whose fault is that? I mean, the voters and the taxpayers and their friends in America wanted houses that had such and such an amenity. Okay, so that's fine. That we want everybody wants houses that are safe and comfortable and not fireproof, but they'll be safe, fairly safe. And we're not going to have people going down on the streets because their houses are not safe enough. That's not President Biden's fault. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of Mr. Biden. The only good thing I could ever think of that's come out of him is that the state of Delaware produces the best French fries and the best fried chicken in America. But there is a gigantic wave of prosperity in America right now. In fact, there is too much, and that is causing the real crisis in the economy. There's no crisis in terms of people not being able to get a job, but there's a crisis in terms of people not being able to live on what they get paid. My wife is an invalid. She's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman. Best person I've ever met in my life. But she's an invalid, and she looks at the checks she gets from her insurance company for long-term care. She couldn't live on that. Not conceivably. And neither could the people who work, the other people who work for us. They couldn't live on that, not conceivably. What are they going to do? There's nothing they can do. I mean, that's just the way things are, and it's going to be difficult. It's going to get to be more difficult. There is no way out of this except to say to ourselves, just suck it up, bite your lip, get another job, get a second job, do something. In the meantime, so your family does not go broke. Make sure you've got enough money saved up. Hidden underneath your 3, 4, 5, 6 of the pillows on your bed. But you are going to have a job, but it's not going to pay enough. We've just got a huge shortage of homes, apartments, condos, and that's a real problem.
Yep.
There's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do about it.
On the air live with Ben Stein for our Frankenstein conversation, and reading on the debate. And so, again, it is tomorrow evening. And I see one poll out today says more Americans expect former President Trump to outperform President Biden in the first presidential debate this time around, according to a new survey. What do you think is going to happen tonight? And P.S., who's going to win the election?
I feel pretty sure that if we get a straight count, and I'm not sure we did last time, that Mr. Trump will win the election. He's got dynamism that Mr. Biden can't even come close to. and he's got just got energy exploding off him that I think voters are going to want to get a piece of. Will they be able to get that piece of it? I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know if they will feel that they can. But if I were a voter and I looked on TV and I saw the energy and vitality of Mr. Trump and the comatose situation of Mr. Biden, I would pull the lever for Mr. Trump. Maybe I shouldn't, but that's how I feel about it. I would not want to go for another 4 years of a person who barely knows where he is.
On there live with the one and only Ben Stein. And, of course, President Trump has been through the legal ringer, and it looks like an immunity ruling may impact this debate tomorrow. He was given that gag order. We've never seen anything like this, where a presidential candidate is under a judge's gag order. So, yeah, give us your. If you can put your legal hat on now, give us your thoughts about that aspect of this.
Well, the basic thought is we have courts, prosecutors, judges, juries now determining the outcome of elections. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be that the outcome of elections is decided by voters and by people who go to the polls and pull the lever. This is something new where the articles of the Constitution have been tossed in the trash can and replaced with various horribly misguided missives from the judges and juries of the United States. This is not supposed to be happening. We're supposed to have a system whereby all the election results are based upon the votes and the wishes of the voters, not by slick lawyers and judges.
On there live with Ben Stein, and of course, President Trump's legal battle is not over. He's fighting on several fronts here. You expect him to be back in court. I guess there's going to be a sentencing, right, pretty soon. What do you think is going to happen?
Very soon.
At the end of this month?
Soon.
Or right, next month.
You know, if it weren't for the fact that Americans are basically a peace-loving, wonderful people, I would say there's going to be civil war. But I don't think we are that kind of people. I think we're the kind of people who want to settle problems peacefully and with love in our hearts for our fellow citizens. I don't think we want to have a civil war, and I don't think we're going to have a civil war. But I think we'll have a lot of anger at how the ruling party, in this case the Democrats, use the legal system to jam up the gears of the voters all over the United States. We have had a system whereby the Constitution has been thrown in the trash can in many parts of the United States and replaced by artfully drawn out legal procedures that just demanded that the president be chosen by judges and juries and not by voters. That's outrageous. That should not be happening.
And then your reaction to this New York Post article, the headline, Hunter Biden laptop liars sold out the country while working for the CIA. According to the article, looks like some of the biggest name spies who lie were active CIA contractors when they pulled the trick of issuing a letter falsely alleging Hunter Biden's 100% real laptop was a Russian info operation. This is right off the New York Post op-ed article. Your reaction to that ahead of the debate tomorrow?
Well, I think this is a phony. I don't think the Russians had anything to do with this. Maybe they did, but of course I have no way of knowing. But I think this election will, despite all the flaws, all the craziness, all the zaniness, all the attempts to bypass and trick Americans into making a decision without the Constitution being followed, despite all of that, I think we are going to get eventually a fairly straight count. But the Republicans have got to just show some strength of character. They've got to say, look, last time this is just my opinion, last time you guys stole the election from us. You Democrats stole the election from us. We're not going to let it happen this time. Of course we're not going to turn to violence. Not a chance, not ever, no matter what. But we are not going to let that happen again. We are going to do anything we possibly can to let this very, very vital situation develop as the voters want it, not as the prosecutors and as the the judges want it. We want an America run by the Constitution, not by powerful and extremely corrupt judges and juries.
Another big issue tomorrow evening, of course, will be geopolitics with the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas following the terror attack on Israel last October 7th. And of course, we had that unprecedented situation over the weekend where a synagogue was surrounded by a mob and Jewish congregants were threatened, and the police apparently overwhelmed in that situation there. And, of course, you have Russia and Ukraine. Give us your thoughts here about the global picture.
How the LAPD could have allowed the members of some congregation, Jewish synagogue, to be bullied into silence and not be allowed to enter their house of worship for prayer is unbelievable. I generally like Mayor Bass. I think she is trying her best, but she screwed up here something so fierce it's unbelievable. She's got to be out of there really, really soon. We've got to have a new mayor, a new city council who will not be pushed around by whatever illegal people are there, illegal immigrants, illegal whatever they are, illegal fraudulent policemen. We've got to have people who really believe in the Constitution. What's it coming down to at the end of the day, Frank? It's coming down to, will we have an America run by the Constitution? Will we have an America run by a group of thugs who call themselves law enforcement officers, but are really thugs operating without the guidance of the Constitution? I mean, there's too many thugs in America.
Ben Stein, thank you very much for taking the call, and look forward to speaking with you again after the debate, perhaps tomorrow evening, and definitely look forward to our next Frankenstein conversation here. You're terrific, Ben. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
God bless you, Frank, and God bless America.
Beautifully said. Ben Stein, the one and only Ben Stein, author, economist, attorney, game show host, and yes, actor too, in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. We'll get him to take the role next time here, as he's done in the past. So Ben Stein, Frankenstein here on 790 KABC. Folks, let's be honest. Sometimes we find ourselves or a loved one dealing with a massive injury caused by a terrible accident by no fault of our own. Sometimes it's simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We're good at preparing for earthquakes and fires, but let's not forget to prepare in case we're involved in a major accident. It's critical to know who to call first. Clark Fielding became a lawyer to help you in a crisis. Fielding Law is focused on justice and resources for you because they understand how the system works and what to do in the most horrific situations. I always say to put the Fielding Law team in your phone under the word accident, so all you have to do is hit the button. Believe me, you'll feel a lot better having set this up for yourself and your family. The number to call is 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK. With the population exploding and increased vehicles on the freeways, be proactive, prepare for the worst, and expect the best. But if and when you do need help, call Clark Fielding and his team of sharks at 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Again, that's clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Winning day for stocks with the Dow up 16 points at 39,128. The S&P 500 up 9 at 5,478. The Nasdaq gained 87.5 points at 17,805. The yield in the 10-year note is back up to 4.33%. NVIDIA shares of 31 cents at $126.40. Apple having a good day at more than $4 at $213.25. Bitcoin pulling back about $150 now, back to 60,803. Ethereum down 16 at 3,371. And let's bring up Doge for you here, right now at 12 cents. And now the latest news here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. A lot riding in the November election here in Los Angeles County. With the Los Angeles County District Attorney's race in focus, the runoff election between the soft-on-crime incumbent DA George Gascon and veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman received the endorsement of Rick Caruso, business and civic leader, former president of the L.A. Police Commission, who spoke on this program just yesterday. And you can review that conversation on the Mottek On Money podcast at kbc.com. Nathan Hochman receiving the endorsement from Rick Caruso, as well as a long list of local elected leaders. Nathan Hochman, a former federal prosecutor, U.S. Assistant Attorney General, president of the City of Los Angeles Ethics Commission, and criminal defense attorney, Nathan Hochman joining me live now this afternoon. Nathan Hochman, thank you very much for taking the call here today.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, Frank.
Wonderful to speak with you again. First of all, give us your reaction to the latest big endorsement you received from Rick Caruso.
Getting Rick Caruso's endorsement, who is one of the most important and influential civic leaders here in Los Angeles, was terrific. I mean, Rick literally could have endorsed anyone he wanted to, and he has looked at what George Gascon and the last 3.5 years have done to our public safety. He talks about the impact that it's had on victims. He talks about the lack of the fear that people feel for the first time, whether it's for themselves or their families, whether it's in going out to a restaurant, into a business, whether it's literally going into the metro or the subway. It's a fear that people have not experienced, but is a product of George Gascon's failed social experiment with our public safety. And he, even though Rick Caruso at one point, a long time ago, thought favorably of George Gascon, as he put it, he gave George Gascon his chance, 3.5 years. Gascon has failed. He got to know me. He says Nathan Hochman can get the job done.
We're on the air live with veteran federal prosecutor Nathan Hochman, who will be facing the incumbent DA George Gascon in November in the runoff election for the important position of Los Angeles County District Attorney. And during the big event yesterday at Casa Vega Restaurant in Sherman Oaks, which has also been hit by a crime, by the way, you met with some of the crime victims, right? Tell us more about your interactions there.
Rick and I had the opportunity both at Casa Vega and then later at a roundtable with victims to meet real-life victims. We're talking mothers, fathers that had lost sons and daughters to murderers. We've talked about the woman who was viciously attacked in the Venice canals recently. People who have suffered, literally death and decimation of their families. And they go ahead and they say, look, the DA has created a culture of lawlessness in the society by telling criminals, almost emboldening criminals, by saying he will not prosecute certain crimes and certain criminals, not because the facts aren't there and not because the law is not there, but because he has a personal political agenda that is more in favor of criminals than it is for victims. And each one of these people who have suffered, look at what George Gascon has done. They gave us one example, that he refuses to send prosecutors with victim families who have suffered relatives who have been murdered to parole hearings when they're confronting the murderer who's seeking to get out of prison early. For decades, prosecutors used to go with victim families because they can make the best arguments and get access to the information the parole board considers. The victim family can't get it themselves. But Gascon came in his first day, first hour, first email in office and prohibited those prosecutors from going with victim families. So these victim families do not look at George Gascon, who is a champion. They look at him as someone who has abandoned victims. And I told these folks, look, I will be your champion. I will support your rights. I will stand up for you against criminals' interests, and I will do it from day one.
On the air live with veteran federal prosecutor Nathan Hochman, and I had the honor of moderating one of the DA candidates' debate for the United Chambers of Commerce in the San Fernando Valley, and you were part of that debate, and the point was made by you as well as the other candidates at the time as far as Gascon's qualifications, never having prosecuted a single case in court, whereas you have prosecuted countless cases. Tell us about that big difference.
Certainly. So typically a DA seeking re-election would say, look at my experience. I have so much more experience than my opponent. The problem with Gascon making that argument is that he literally has never personally prosecuted or defended a single criminal case in his entire career. I have done that for 34 years. I was a prosecutor for 10 years, brought over 100 different prosecutions. And I've been a defense attorney for 24 years and defended over 200 cases. So in the columns, it'd be 0 for Gascon, 34 years for Hochman. Also, usually a prosecutor would tout their record of public safety and say, look at all the great public safety I brought you for the first 4 years. Give me 4 more years and I'll bring you more of the same. He can't tout a record of public safety failure because violent crimes have risen every single year in which he's been in office compared to the year he came into office. Property crimes, which are people breaking into your house, your car, your store, they're up double digits. Hate crimes are up over 100%. Fentanyl poisonings will kill more 18 to 35-year-olds than anything else out there, and we are the capital of human trafficking. George Gascon's record of public safety is a record of failure, and that is why the current polls that are recently done, show that I'm ahead by 15 points, which is an indication of how incredibly unpopular and incredibly unsafe people feel today compared to when George Gascon came into office.
On there live with Nathan Hochman, and let me ask you this. I think the night of the debate that we had there, I think that was the same day that the report came in that shoplifting in Los Angeles was up 81%. You're speaking to the business audience here now, and obviously hit hard by shoplifting, retail theft, smash and grab robberies, and worse. What are your thoughts about turning that situation around with the Prop 47 reform supposed to be on the ballot, and now what's going on in Sacramento, perhaps interfering with those reforms? What about the retail theft issue here?
Certainly. And my heart goes out to store owners in our society, because right now if someone comes into your store, particularly a juvenile, and basically takes a couple $100 of merchandise, who are you going to call? If you call the police, they're going to tell you the DA is not going to bring that case, so why are they even going to take your report? If they actually do take the report and they arrest the person, that person will be out before the paperwork is actually dry that the police officer is filling out. And then if you actually want the police report for an insurance claim, the insurance company will tell you your deductible is going to eat up most of the loss you just suffered, and we're going to cancel your policy if you go ahead and file a claim. So my heart goes out to store owners, and what I tell them is that I can change that from day one. I will work with the 750 prosecutors that Gascon has abandoned. In fact, 98% of them have supported his recall. I'll work with them to bring back a culture of accountability. Right now, we are dealing with a culture of lawlessness, where basically criminals have been emboldened to not just take a couple $100 from a store, but engage in smash and grab robberies, violent robberies, follow home robberies, car robberies, and whatnot. We can change that by my working with the prosecutors, working as a partner with the tens of thousands of law enforcement officers, and tell them the DA is back doing his job, and then work with victim groups as well. And we don't have to go back to the 60s or 70s, Frank, to talk about days of safety. We just need to go back to 2014, considered our safest year in the last 50 years, because the DA at the time was doing her job. That was Jackie Lacey. Law enforcement had a partner in the DA's office, so it was doing its job. Victims knew that if you dialed 911, the police would not only show up, but you would get justice brought to you for any harm you had suffered. And criminals understood where the lines were and that there were real consequences on the other side. So they were actually deterred from committing the crimes in the first place, thus leading to a whole lot less victims.
Nathan Hochman, thank you very much for taking the call here. I wish we had more time, but look forward to many more conversations. That is veteran federal prosecutor Nathan Hochman, who is on the ballot in November in the runoff election against soft-on-crime incumbent DA George Gascon in the very important Los Angeles County District Attorney's race. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Out to the freeways now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. A lot riding on that presidential debate tomorrow evening, and a lot riding on the November election for you, the consumer, investors, and the economy. Let's get a preview of the debate now from taxpayer advocate Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, thank you very much for taking the call here. And big difference in tax policy, I'm sure we'll be hearing tomorrow evening. Lay it out for us.
Well, we're going to have the biggest difference between two people running for president in American history on the tax issue. There are a lot of issues out there, but Biden wants to raise taxes $5-7 trillion on top of all the spending and taxes and printing of money that he's already done. And the president wants to take a $4 trillion tax cut, making it permanent, $40 trillion over a 10-year period, and is also looking to add some thoughts to that, to take the business tax, the corporate income tax, right now it's at 21%. China's at 25 and 15 for their two rates. The Democrats want to take that up to 28 to be higher than China, so we won't be competitive against China. The president wants to take it at least to 20. He's also talked about 18 and 15, bringing it down more so that we are more competitive with China. And of course, Biden wants to take the capital gains tax to 44.6%. For those of you in California, if you add your state tax in, the capital gains tax would be 60% under Biden. So you run a business with your spouse, you work 30, 40 years, you build it up, you sell it, you look at the tidy sum that you earned when you sell it, and between Newsom and Biden, they'll take 60% of your life work. That's after, by the way, after every single year they had FICA taxes and income taxes and sales taxes and property taxes on you that you paid, then just what you saved, what you created would be more than cut in half by the tax, the capital gains tax. That's Biden's plan. He also has a second death tax, in addition to the one we have now, Biden. That is a tax on all the inflation while you were building up your estate. Right now, when you pass something on, the inflation part of it doesn't necessarily, that you don't have to pay death tax on that. Biden wants to make sure you do, that you pay taxes on the 18% inflation that he's done so far in his presidency, and the government would take half of that make-believe gain because it's just inflation gain. So it's a big decision, and the tax issue goes two different directions. I really like President Trump's idea of not taxing tips. Several million people, maybe 10 million Americans, earn tips as part of what they do. Restaurants, barbershops, all the various things where people get tips.
Right, in the gig economy.
And so on. Yeah, that I think is wise and a political winner.
On the air live with Grover Norquist, the nation's best analyst on tax policy, America's leading taxpayer advocate and IRS practices expert as well. Of course, a keen observer, as you've heard for many years on this program. So we appreciate your in-depth knowledge of all of this, Grover Norquist. And President Biden, I believe when he took office, said he wanted to see China rise, right? It's been soft on China, and now you mentioned this tax policy here that would put American companies at a disadvantage. Tell us more about that important aspect of what we'll probably hear more about tomorrow.
Well, President Trump would like to compete with China in international competition and economics by having lower taxes in America and lower regulatory costs and high wages. But what Biden's doing is he says, no, we're going to have higher taxes in China, higher regulations, particularly all the green regulations. China doesn't have any of that stuff. They don't care. They don't think it's important. But Biden makes all American products much more expensive with those regulations. So Biden says Americans will have very high costs on regulations, high costs on taxes, and they'll have to compete with China with lower wages. I don't think that's how we want to compete with China, but that's what Biden is doing. He says, and Trump goes, no, we're going to have high wages, low cost of government, low cost taxes, low cost regulations.
On the air live with Grover Norquist. Of course, one of the most famous scenes in presidential debates was when former Vice President Mondale faced off with the incumbent President Ronald Reagan in the 1984 debate, and Mondale pledged to raise taxes. And had egg on his face and lost in a landslide to President Reagan, 49 out of 50 states. I believe he won Minnesota, and that was it. What do you think it's going to look like tomorrow when the tax issue comes up again?
Oh, wow. I hope the president reminds everybody that the corporate income tax is not a tax on somebody named General Motors. The corporate income tax is a tax on consumers, people who buy cars. The corporate tax on a grocery store gives you higher cost carrots and higher cost potatoes and higher cost everything else. And if it's a very competitive market, you can't raise prices, well, then wages have to go down because the government's going to take $100,000 or $1 million out of your business comes out of somewhere. And if they really damage your business and it reduces in value, then everybody who invested in it through a 401k or an IRA or a pension, they see their life savings go down. So the corporate income tax is paid by consumers in higher prices, workers in lower wages, and retirees in lower benefits and pensions.
On the air live with taxpayer advocate Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. Any other final thoughts here as we head into the debate tomorrow evening?
I think we also might see the president come out for reducing the excise taxes on beer, the excise taxes on guns, things that don't cost, they're not, raise a lot of money, but they do make it difficult for people in cities to be able to afford to defend themselves or to just have a beer on Saturday because the government keeps jacking up the price.
Well, here's to you, Grover. Cheers to you, and thanks for taking the call here as always. I look forward to talking to you after this debate and getting more information and always terrific information about what's happening on the tax front from you, as well as your organization website, Americans for Tax Reform. That is Grover Norquist, America's leading taxpayer advocate, president of Americans for Tax Reform, which was formed with President Reagan back in the day. Thank you very much, Grover, for taking the call live with us here this afternoon.
You got it. Take it easy.
Thank you very much. And again, the debate is tomorrow evening, and you'll hear it live right here on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and we'll be doing more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
When you have sports mixed with your pop culture, along with humor and celebrity interviews, your earbuds are enjoying The Rich Eisen Show.
You are so obsessed with betting. I don't need to bet.
You're adamant that you're going to win, and I'm adamant that they're not going to win.
Why does money have to be exchanged?
You're a realist.
Like he believes it, you believe it.
Why is that? Well, that's no fun in that.
It's a conversation that you can have, and then Monday it's just like, I told you so. I mean, that's verbal currency.
There's nothing fun there.
Search for The Rich Eisen Show on YouTube or wherever you listen.